Then Jesus told them, "This very night you will all fall away on account of me, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered." And that goes back to Zechariah 13, verse 7. "But after I have risen, I will go ahead of you into Galilee." Peter replied, "Even if all fall away on account of you, I never will." "I tell you the truth," Jesus answered, "this very night, before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times." But Peter declared, "Even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you." And so all the other disciples said the same. Now, John, again, this is an abbreviated version of this conversation, and John will give us a fuller account of it and put it more correctly in its situational and chronological context. Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane, which is an olive press. This is an olive garden, apparently. And he said to them, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, that'd be James and John, along with him. And he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." Going a little farther, I guess he assumed they were supposed to be praying. I guess the other 8 men, Judas is no longer with them, so there's only 11. 8 of them are, I guess, at the entrance to the garden. 3 of them go farther with Jesus into the garden. And I guess the idea is that they would all be praying together for strength for the trials to come this night. So going a little farther, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will." Then he returned to his disciples and found, now this was obviously a much longer prayer than what we read here. He would have been on the ground praying for some time. I don't know exactly how long, an hour, it estimates maybe an hour here, but long enough for all 3 of the other men to fall asleep. That wouldn't have happened if he had just been praying for a couple of minutes. So he was out there for a while, wrestling with this request he had. Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. "Could you men not keep watch with me for 1 hour?" he asked Peter. "Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the body is weak." He went away a second time and prayed, "My Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done." So initially he was asking, "Please take this cup from me. But I'll do it if not as I will, but as you will. If you insist, I'll do it, but please take it from me." Here he's saying, okay, if this can't be done, if there's no other way than to do it this way, then may your will be done. So he's my video looked like it was stuck there for a moment. So he's progressed from asking for this cup to be removed to saying, if it can't be removed, may your will be done. The fact that there was no answer, that this cup was not removed from him, indicates that it was not possible. He asked specifically if it's possible, may this cup be taken from me. The cup was not taken from him, indicating that it was not possible. There was no other way for the salvation of men to be obtained. But God's will is first. And so Jesus will go through with it if that is the Father's will. But you can tell here that he didn't actually want to. When the time came, he'd been talking about it for a long time. He'd been talking about it ever since Matthew 16. He's known his entire adult life, at least, about the prophecies that he interpreted as being about himself, that this was going to happen to him someday. But now that the moment is here, it's intense. His soul is overwhelmed with sorrow. Now that the moment has arrived, It's not just something he's talking about that's going to happen weeks or months or even years in the future. It's something that's going to happen right now. It's going to happen before the day is broken, before the night is over. And it's tough. Even for Jesus, it was tough. But he went ahead with it because that was the Father's will, all the way to the end. When he came back, he again found them sleeping because their eyes were heavy. So he left them and went away one more time and prayed the same thing. Prayed the third time, saying the same thing. So 3 times he prayed for this cut to be removed. And it was not removed. And again, these aren't just simple one-sentence prayers. He's out there for a while. He's out there long enough for the men behind him to fall asleep. He's out there apparently at midnight or later, okay? So he gets arrested, he's going to get taken to the courts, and this is all before daybreak. So they had the Passover. They would have started that at sundown, I presume. And so they went out to the Mountain of Olives, the garden press, the Mount Gethsemane, Garden of Gethsemane, excuse me. And then he went out there and prayed, and then, so apparently this is like in the middle of the night now. So he's been out there 3 times, and each time he's been out there for a while. But each time he got the response, no, there is not going to be another way. This is the way that has been decided. This is the only way that it can be done. And so Jesus is going to do what the Father wills, and this is what the Father wills. Then he returned to the disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the hour is near, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer." He's on his way. Literally on his way. I mean, Jesus is probably looking at him as he comes. Because while he is still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived. So Jesus is probably looking at him as he's on his way. With him was a large crowd armed with swords and clubs, sent from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now, I don't know exactly what Judas has been doing since he left the upper room. He apparently went to the chief priests. He told them already he was going to do this. I guess he knew that Jesus was going to go to the garden afterwards. Maybe he actually went back to the upper room, and they were to find Jesus there, and they were already gone. It's possible, and they were already gone. And so then he figured, well, we're going to go to the Mount of Olives, the Garden of Gethsemane next. He knew where to find him, although it's possible he may have gone to the upper room first, expecting him to still be there, and then from there, I don't know, because we don't know what he was doing. He went to the priest, he got a bunch of guards from the temple, and they eventually tracked Jesus down to this garden. Whether Judas knew he was going to be here initially or not, he finds him here. With him was a large crowd armed with swords and clubs, sent from the chief priests and the elders of the people. So these are the temple police. These are the temple guards. Now later on, we're going to be reading about the Roman guards guarding the tomb. Those are the Roman soldiers. These are not, however, Roman soldiers here. These are temple guards. Now the betrayer had arranged a signal with them. "The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him." Going at once to Jesus, Judas said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. Jesus replied, "Friend, do what you came for," or "Friend, why have you come?" I'm not sure exactly what the grammatical issue is with the original language, why it's not certain if it's a statement or a question, but it does say the word friend, apparently. Because either version of it seems to have the word friend in there. Jesus is still extending the hand of friendship to Judas, even though Judas has withdrawn his hand of friendship. Then the men stepped forward, seized Jesus, and arrested him. With that, one of Jesus' companions, which we'll find out in the Gospel of John is Peter, reached for his sword, drew it out, and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. He was probably aiming for the head. He was probably trying to cut off his head, and missed and got the ear instead. "Put your sword back in its place," Jesus said to him. "For all who draw the sword will die by the sword. Do you think I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? But how then would the scriptures be fulfilled that say it must happen in this way? So Jesus could have backed out. Even with the Father's will being that he goes to the cross, if Jesus had said, no, I won't, the Father would have sent angels to him to help. Okay? This is where we get the whole idea of Jesus putting himself under the authority of the Father despite being equal with him, despite being God, like the Father himself was God. Jesus deliberately put himself under the authority of the Father. He didn't have to. In his very essence of a being, he is not under God. They're both God. It's meant, two members of the Godhead coexisting equally along with the Holy Spirit. We read about this in Philippians and in other places, but it's very well summed up in this poem or song that Paul recites in Philippians 2. Your attitude should be the same as that of Christ Jesus. This is Philippians 2, starting in verse 5. Who, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be grasped, but made himself nothing, taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself, and became obedient to death, even death on a cross, the worst kind of death. Therefore God exalted him to the highest place, and gave him the name that is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow, in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue confess that Christ Jesus is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. So Jesus was not unequal with God or under the authority of God, but he voluntarily put himself in that position. So if the Father wills it, the Son will do it. But if the Son calls on the Father for help, the Father will help him. If the Son does not want to go through with it and says, Father, send me a fleet of angels to get me out of here, he would do it. But Jesus has put himself voluntarily under the authority of his Father from the beginning, from the whole incarnation on. He's been doing this. The Godhead made up its mind before the world began that they were going to do this. That they were going to split themselves into 3 parts, and each part was going to have this specific role. And that was a decision that was made in the mind of God before he said let there be light in Genesis 1. So Jesus, from before the beginning of creation, has taken this role of putting himself under the authority of the Father figure of the Godhead, and has been doing it consistently. He's not going to stop doing it now. Now that the key moment has come, he's not going to stop. Because then how would the scriptures be fulfilled that say it must happen in this way? At that time Jesus said to the crowd, am I leading a rebellion that you have come out with swords and clubs to capture me? So they're seeing him as just another revolutionary figure. Because, rebels and rebellions would not have been uncommon in Jerusalem at this point in time. The guy that he's going to be taking the place of on the cross, Barabbas, was a rebel, was a leader was a murderer and a rebel. The men he's crucified with, he decided they were probably members of Barabbas' gang. So this idea of rebellion and rebels was not uncommon in Jerusalem at this time. And so he's asking, am I that kind of guy? Did you see me with a rebel army? Am I leading a rebellion that you have come out with swords and clubs to capture me? Every day I sat in the temple courts teaching, and you did not arrest me. But this has all taken place that the writings of the prophets might be fulfilled. Then all the disciples deserted him and fled. All of them did. It wasn't. Now Peter will come back. John will come back, as we read about in John. But they all fled to begin with. Those who had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the teachers of the law and the elders had assembled. This is overnight. This is sometime late at night. I don't know when exactly, 1, 2, 3 in the morning. I'm not sure exactly. But this is sometime during the middle of the night. They weren't supposed to have a trial then. This is not a proper proceeding. Now we'll read, now again, Jesus actually has 6 different trials as he goes around from one place to another as they're trying their hardest to find some legal justification to put him to death. No one gospel gives us an account of all 6 trials. When you put them all together, you'll find out that there are 6 separate arraignments or hearings or whatever you want to call them that they have as they struggle to find a way to get this guy convicted. And all of them were improper and illegal. Those who had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the teachers of the law and the elders had assembled. But Peter followed him at a distance, so he came back. He ran like all the others did, but he turned around and came back, and there was another one, as we read about in John, someone else who was with him. Probably John himself, although it's not made totally clear. But Peter followed him at a distance, right up to the courtyard of the high priest. He entered and sat down with the guards to see the outcome, or to see the end. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for false evidence against Jesus. They could put it up. So they weren't even looking for legitimate evidence. They knew there was none of that. They were looking for false evidence, anything they could find. But they did not find any, though many false witnesses came forward. I don't know who these false witnesses were. Apparently, the Sanhedrin had them ready to go. Apparently, they had already found people who were willing to be false witnesses and give false testimony, which, by the way, breaks one of the 10 Commandments. Apparently, they had already found people who were willing to do this, to give false testimony, and had them ready to go. Because this is an overnight. This is like 2 or 3 in the morning. So they wouldn't have just found people on the spur of the moment. They must have had them ready. Finally, 2 came forward and declared, "This fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 days." Now, we don't hear him say that, anything like that in the Gospel of Matthew, or Mark, or Luke. You have to go all the way to the Gospel of John to finally get the context for what Jesus said that is being misinterpreted here by these people. It's interesting. I think that's interesting. This accusation is brought against him in these Gospels, but these Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, don't include any statement from him that even remotely resembles that. You have to get all the way to John to find that out. It's almost like John is filling in the blanks, huh? We'll get to that when we get to the book of John. Then the high priest stood up and said to Jesus, "Are you not going to answer? What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you?" But Jesus remained silent. As a sheep before his shearers is silent. Let's take a look here. This goes back to Isaiah 53. One of the suffering servant prophecies of Isaiah. Let's go ahead and start in verse 13 of chapter 52. "See, my servant will act wisely. He will be raised and lifted up and highly exalted. Just as there were many who were appalled at him, his appearance was so disfigured beyond that of any man, and his form marred beyond human likeness. And so he will sprinkle many nations, and kings will shut their mouths because of him. For what they were not told they will see, and what they have not heard they will understand. Who has believed our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? Who grew up before him like a tender shoot, and like a root out of dry ground. He had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him, nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows, and familiar with suffering. Like one from whom men hide their faces, he was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he took up our infirmities and carried our sorrows, and we considered him stricken by God, smitten by him, and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. We all, like sheep, have gone astray. Each of us has turned to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before her shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth. By oppression and judgment he was taken away. And who can speak of his descendants? For he was cut off from the land of the living. For the transgression of my people he was stricken. He was assigned a grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death, though he had done no violence, nor was any deceit in his mouth. Yet it was the Lord's will to crush him and may cause him to suffer, which we read about in the garden prayer in Gethsemane. And though the Lord makes his life a guilt offering, he will see his offspring and prolong his days, and the will of the Lord will prosper in his hand. After the suffering of his soul, he will see the light of life and be satisfied. By his knowledge, my righteous servant will justify many, and he will bear their iniquities. Therefore, I will give him a portion among the great, and he will divide the spoils with the strong, because he poured out his life unto death and was numbered with the transgressors. For he bore the sin of many and made intercession for the transgressors. All those things are going to be fulfilled in Jesus. Some of them were fulfilled during his life and ministry, and the rest will be fulfilled during this hour of trial that he encounters from this night until the next day when he dies on the cross at 3 o'clock or so in the afternoon, and then gets buried. But Jesus remained silent. As the sheep before her shearers are silent, so was Jesus. The high priest said to him, I charge you under oath by the living God. Tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God. So now Jesus is under oath. He's got to say something in response to this. Yes, it is as you say, Jesus replied. But I say to all of you, in the future you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven. Now we've got to look up some chapters to indicate to know what he's talking about here. The Son of Man, of course, goes back to Daniel. Daniel and Ezekiel use that phrase both. Ezekiel uses it when God speaks to Ezekiel and calls him a Son of Man, which basically just means human. Daniel uses it for a specific individual in a specific context here in Daniel 7. So he sees this beast, these tremendous, horrible, awful beasts, which get overthrown by a rock. That's chapter 2, the rock. He sees these horrible beasts, and one of them has a horn on it that speaks boastfully against the saints and acts violently against them. This is Daniel 7. But then, in my vision at night, starting in verse 13, I looked, and there before me was one like a son of man, so like a human, coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence. So a man, one like a man, coming on the clouds in the presence of the Ancient of Days, that's God, led into his presence and was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All peoples, nations, and men of every language worshipped him. So that's the title Jesus is applying to himself, saying, I am that Son of Man. Son of Man itself just means human. I am that. I am the human of humans. I am the true human that is going to be led to the presence of God and given these authority. That figure is me. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed. Now let's flip back to Psalm 110. Jesus himself mentioned this earlier when he was questioning. After getting questions from the priests and Pharisees, he then asked them a question about who is the Christ. How is he David's son and David's Lord at the same time? He gets that from Psalm 110. So let's read Psalm 110, which also bears on this. Of David, Psalm 110, of David, a psalm. The Lord, L-O-R-D, capital L-O-R-D, Yahweh, that's God, the covenant Israel's covenant God, said to my Lord, my master, lowercase L-O-R-D, my master, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet. So he's going to be sitting at the right hand of God. So Yahweh is saying to Adonai, the master, the covenant God of Israel is saying to the Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet. The Lord will extend your mighty scepter from Zion. You will rule in the midst of your enemies. Your troops will be willing in the day of battle. Arrayed in holy majesty, from the womb of the dawn you will receive the dew of your youth. The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever in the order, because this will be important later. We don't understand the meaning of this part of the psalm now, but we will later. The Lord is at your right hand. He will crush kings in the day of his wrath. He will judge the nations, heaping up the dead and crushing the rulers of the whole earth. He will drink from a brook beside the way, therefore he will lift up his head. So, it is as you say, but I say to all of you, in the future you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One, and coming on the clouds of heaven. Then the high priest tore his clothes and said, he can't handle this. This is way too much for him. He has spoken blasphemy. Why do we need any more witnesses? Look, you have now heard this blasphemy. What do you think? He is worthy of death, they answered. He would be, if what he's saying is not true. If he's making these claims without a proper basis for it, yes, he is worthy of death. That's the question, though. Who is this guy? Who is this Son of Man? He calls himself the Son of Man here. He says, I am who you say I am. It is as you say. Are you the Christ, the Son of God? Yes, it is as he says that he is. If he's not true, if he's not right about this, then yes, this would be blasphemous. He is worthy of death, they answered. Then they spit in his face and struck him with their fists. Others slapped him and said, prophesy to us, Christ. Who hit you? They had blindfolded him before they did this. I don't really know why Matthew didn't include that. It doesn't make sense otherwise. The only way that works is if his eyes are covered, he doesn't see. So they're mocking him, saying, all right, who's hitting you? We're all hitting you. Who's hitting you? This, apparently, from what I can tell, is just them punching him or slapping him. It's going to get a lot worse than this. Right now, he's just getting punched in the face. If that's not bad enough, getting punched in the face on multiple people, it's going to get a lot worse in the hours to come. Now, Peter was sitting out in the courtyard, and a servant girl came to him. You also were with Jesus of Galilee, she said. But he denied it before them all. I don't know what you're talking about, he said. Then he went out to the gateway, where another girl saw him and said to the people, I don't know who these people were. Okay, the various Gospels give various accounts of who these individuals are who identify Peter. And there must have been like a crowd of people around, and they all spoke differently to him. Because one of them is a girl. In some cases, it's the same girl. This one is a different girl. And then some of them indicate it's a man. Okay, I'm guessing there were just a crowd of people around, and they were all talking to him. And it's hard to identify which specific person said something at which time. Another girl saw him and said to the people there, this fellow was with Jesus of Nazareth. He denied it again with an oath. I don't know the man. Remember how back in the Old Testament, occasionally we would see people say something like, may the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if I don't do what I say I'm going to do, or something like that. That's pretty much what he's saying here. Just, may God judge me if I'm telling you a lie. I don't know the man. After a little while, those standing there went up to Peter and said, surely you are one of them, because your accent gives you away. So he's from the north, he's from Galilee. He's not from Jerusalem. So he has a slightly different accent than the he's will do down here in Jerusalem, in Judea. He's from the north, they're from the south. He's from Galilee, which is north of here. So, and they all are. Jesus, the only one of Jesus' disciples who was not from that area was Judas Iscariot, who was from the south. So that may have been another part of the problem. I don't know. So he talks differently than the Jerusalem dwellers. But your accent gives you away. Then he began to call down curses on himself and swore to them, I don't know the man. Immediately a rooster crowed. Mark tells us a rooster crowed twice. Then Peter remembered the word Jesus had spoken. Before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. And he went outside and wept bitterly.